This video tutorial is meant to accompany the Bongo FLA file that you received as part of our course. The purpose of this video is to walk you through some of the back-end processes that make the Bongo interactive presentation work. It will help you see some simple animation in use to embellish a simple topic and make it more interesting, and it also uses action script that is basic enough you should be able to understand its concept, yet just sophisticated enough to give us an interactive presentation that's interesting to watch. We'll go ahead and launch Bongo first so you can see what it looks like. You'll notice that when I press on these arrow keys, Bongo will start to walk and the background will start to move the other direction. What I also want you to pay attention to is that in the background you'll find little animated components that also add character. So let's take a minute to see what it looks like. So to really understand how it's working, first we should look at the star, which is Bongo Here he is in the middle as a movie clip. If you notice, Bongo actually never really moves. He just changes his position and the background is actually what moves. Notice that because Brett is an instance, he has the instance name of Brett. Simple enough. If we double click and go into his movie clips timeline, you can see that he's actually made up of 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The code that we're about to look at actually tells Bongo which direction he should be facing and whether or not he should be standing still or walking. And just for a quick reference, his animation is very simple. It's just 2 alternating foot positions like that. When you speed those up and play them real time, it just gives him this peculiar little penguin walk that's perfect for our animated presentation. If we go back to the main scene, you'll also see that the movie clip itself for the background is full of animation. It's one large graphic, but it also has several small movie clips built into it. For example, here's the seagull. When we look at its timeline, we see that it's only about 170 frames. The seagull mostly just looks around, bobs his head, does a few bird-like things, and then it just loops over and over. And that just gives a little extra flavor into this scene where the sign appears at the beginning. If we go back to the actual presentation, we have 4 instances that will be a part of the code. Right button, left button, Brett, and the beach background. Very simple. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the code. If we open the actions window on frame 30, I have a stop command to keep it there on the timeline. I have a variable called movement that's currently set to 0 when you start. That means nothing's happened, nobody's pressed a button yet, and Brett is just standing still. Here we have a function called Brett controls, and that actually is being activated per frame by this script at the very bottom. This will actually make the function happen 24 times a second because that's the speed of our movie. What that means is that the function Brett controls is going to dictate the movement of the background. So there's the beach background instance name. Notice we're talking about the .x property, which is its x coordinate on the stage. And then these are the commands that will tell it, first of all, how far it can go, and secondly, what increment it will move by, which in this case is 25 pixels negative and positive 25 pixels if it's moving to the left. The next phase of controls are right here, and these are the listeners. This tells the right button instance that if it's pressed down to run the move right function. That happens to be right here, and notice that it does 2 simple things. It tells Brett, the penguin, to go to frame 2, which is him facing to the right and walking, and it also sets the movement variable to a value of R so that this motion can now be activated. The same goes for the left button, and obviously it just has these 2 different functions itself. The final step is that both the right and left button use this function called end movement. Now, end movement is activated anytime the buttons are let go, which is a mouse up, or anytime that the mouse rolls out of them, which is a mouse out. So right here in the end movement function, we just see two very simple sets of commands. Here is a condition that notices that if you let go of the right button, it tells Brett to go to frame 1 and stop. If you remember, that's an image of Brett when he is facing to the right and holding still. If you let go of the left button, Brett will go to frame 3 of his movie clip, which is him holding still and facing to the left. All of these little scripts and functions bounce off of each other depending on what's going on in the presentation, but as you can see, it's a fairly simple setup. If you wanted to experiment with changing the background to go faster, you could change both of these increments to be higher values. If you wanted it to go very slow, you could change this to a low value of 10 or below, and then the background would move by at incredibly slow speeds. So that's it. That's basically how Bongo Brett was built. Hopefully you enjoyed this presentation and or experimenting with the Bongo Brett FLA file. If you wanted to experiment with more things, you could actually replace the artwork in the Brett movie clip with your own character and see what that looks like. I hope you give it a try, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.